Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's the Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
And unfortunately, with some guests, I've had to make sure I have to press the button right away. Otherwise, there's going to be some other amusing bits. It's like, we should have totally recorded that.
Right.
They just started blabbing, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I need to push the button. So, welcome to the show, Jeramiah Pierce, former security coworker of mine, and man, what a crap year, and we're finally past it, hopefully. And we're going to talk about none only than the most often talked about addicted to the edge of the year seat, Breaking Bad, and it's some of its spinoff, Better Call Saul. And as many people have probably heard 100 times over, it's about kind of a teacher who decides, hey, it's time to make drugs. in this case, it's crack, and then other types of meth, and it just gets out of control. It's the best shit hit the fan kind of show you could think of.
Yeah, and I like it because the first crime he actually commits is, I think, is murder, really.
And that's just it, and I came into this late. I decided, okay, damn me, why have I not seen this yet? Everyone's been talking about it, surely it can't be just, I think the biggest issue is I was seeing people just swarm around it like Big Lebowski. They're just quoting it, science, bitch, and it's like, okay, this doesn't sound highbrow. This doesn't sound like it's that great. Best of all time. I mean, pushing. And so then finally I get into it, after just one episode, seriously, just the pilot, I'm like, okay, I'm in for a ride. I'm in for something cool.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that one of the original considerations was Matthew Broderick.
No, really? I didn't know that.
And nothing against Bueller or anything, but I can't entirely see that. I can see why they were thinking of that at the time, if they needed funding, if they needed just some extra star power to lean on. But
well, it always surprised me on casting choices. I mean, at one point they were considering who was it, Frank Sinatra for like Die Hard.
Yeah, because he had been in The Detective, which was by the same author, the movie was, and they just, Sinatra at that point was retiring. He's like, get out of here. I can't do that. And so.
And you can't imagine, in that role.
Yeah, what's even more frightening is in that book that became Die Hard, the daughter's actually gets killed or something. It's like, stuff that even the most, edgy filmmaker can't imagine doing now, It's just, unless they want a shocking cliffhanger of a TV show or a more independent and less restricted movie, it's just, it's like death to a mainstream audience. And here, this one basically, it took a chance. It had, the most of the crew had been just writing for X-Files most of their lives, and they were edgy to break out, do their own thing, and I gotta hand it to you. Every part of this casting surprised me.
I mean,
Anna
they
Gunn.
came out of their own. I mean, it looked really. It just the whole thing was really really good.
Right. So to get to the overall basis of this all, like, what everyone just mainly needs to know is, you got Walter White, played by Bryan Cranston, who, other than Seinfeld, had kind of been mostly a TV voice and B-movie actor.
He did
But-
play some. He did play some action roles prior. I know where he was in the. He was a. I don't know. He was a police officer or going undercover. I can't remember what the name of the movie is though.
Oh, okay. Bryan Cranston, undercover police movie. I've seen him in some cheesy sci-fi, stuff for like Roger Corman, but I know he broke out of that pretty fast, and basically his slide into it was being the dad on Malcolm in the Middle. So there you go. And I didn't watch that enough, but I'd seen him, guest on some other roles, like, he had stuff like, the creators also knew him from a crazy X-Files episode, and I know he was the colonel at the very beginning of Saving Private Ryan, so that was pretty cool. And
that movie was The Infiltrator, the one I was talking about.
Shoot.
Yeah. You remember that one? Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. And I think that apparently came a little after, but he definitely got it because, this, is like drugs,
Yeah, I thought it was before.
Stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All good. But, what I mean? So there you go. You got someone who, again, just now everyone wants him to do a role that's edgy or just unpredictable. He got some other ones like Sneaky Pete. I guess you could say some people might vaguely remember him on a brief recurring role on Seinfeld and the Stephen Bochco cop show Brooklyn South. But it is kind of wild. It's like now he's got just this whole new fan base that everyone's like, oh yeah, it's that guy from Breaking Bad, isn't it? And most people just like they can't name his earlier stuff, and that's a shame because it's like, well, now you should check out his other stuff because he was good then.
He was a great actor before. He was a very underrated actor. When I was growing up, Malcolm in the Middle was like the main thing that I remember him from. That's kind of So
then he does these other unusual roles like in Argo, guest appearances on 30 Rock, even playing Walter White on The Simpsons, and now he's also brief.
He was on that movie Drive, which is one of my favorites.
And
my favorites.
That's like only like a few years after this, and is like, yeah, he definitely got it because of that. He's one of the cops in The Lincoln Lawyer, and also the bad. Then he, for a while, kind of gets to still the show as a bad guy and other stuff like Cold Comes the Night, where he plays as this blind thief. But you look at the poster and you're like, yeah, that's Walter White if he decided to be even more ruthless.
Right.
And then there's Argo, and and Contagion. Definitely had me on the edge of the seat, just because they were basically, he's taken it to another level, being kind of a wacky character in those, and it's like, okay, even better, so he can't typecast himself anymore. Now he's shown so many different types of emotions. If anyone can, please check out his, just Google somewhere, on any of the third-party streaming sites, his Inside the Actor Studio episode. He'll have you on the verge of tears because he just shows you how he just got into character, especially for this one when he sees that he's accidentally made Jesse Pinkman's girlfriend overdose on the drugs he left.
he becomes a really unlikable character in a lot of ways. On a lot of,
Oh yeah, and uh, yeah,
but
and
I still liked him. But he was very like he would do stuff that
yeah, people got to remember it's fiction, and at the same time, it's like okay, no
Yeah.
one would let their guard down this much to where they had to go back, do this and that, and along the way, if you want to even nitpick his journey, you'll see why he slipped so many times because he
Right.
he doesn't know how to keep both worlds at bay. He's like Jekyll and Hyde. He
Right.
can't keep it together, and you can't blame him either because he's
But
still
that's what I liked him for. Was that I mean he was just such a bad person that you had to like him.
yeah, and
Because he straight up like that. For example, when he brought up the girl, I mean, he probably could have found a way to work around that, but she was such a nuisance to him that he wasn't, he wasn't, directly choking her. He simply just decided not to save her.
right, he decided to be he kind of becomes in many ways kind of a playing God kind of hitman because then he realizes
Right.
oh now I got to kill my employers and
Right.
brings me to the next transition. What brilliant casting of the first main client and biggest burden, which is Gus, who at daytime is a McDonald's style Tex-Mex restaurant owner, and at night is one of the main big cartel.
I always thought of it more like a cross between Chick-fil-A and Pollo Regio, which
Yeah,
is
my
a
bad. I'm.
place I like. But
Shoot, yeah, you're right. It was serving a bunch of chicken, and what was weird is, yeah, the plays in those kind of things. It's like it's not dun 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 dun. Dun. It's kind of like then it goes like even more just kind of like the music will often stop as soon as everybody's talking in the place because they're just all intent on threatening each other. And Gus was just definitely the most bizarre of these gangsters because what brilliant casting by Italian black actor Giancarlo Esposito, and here he is playing a Chilean-born ruthless guy, and you're in my opinion, Breaking Bad would not be Breaking Bad without him. I just he brought such a different level.
That was my first actual role like that I saw him play, and then when I see him in other appearances like Community, it seemed just so out of he's such a nice guy.
Yeah. Shoot. I've seen him in the other drug crime thriller Fresh. Oh God, that's such a depressing movie. But yeah, he was mainly kind of one of those guys. I heard the name. I saw it credited whenever I would see, a movie guy. I mean, like, I don't really know exactly who he looks like. Is he? And then I had kind of trouble, not to judge anyone's race, but I just was wondering, okay, so what is he exactly? He's a chameleon. Is he Puerto Rican? Is he,
Yeah. When I saw him on Breaking Bad, I assumed he was Hispanic, and then his name. That was my assumption. Being multiracial, most people assume I'm Hispanic, so I know what he. I kind of have that same thing going.
Yeah. Shoot. I mean, he kind of, in many ways, kind of had to basically he had to become the secondary tragic story of this whole thing because then you find out why he became a terrible person, ruthless, developed his own empire. And
My favorite.
Sorry,
bad guy.
yeah, and just having the other, former crooked cop turned hitman, Mike, played by Jonathan Banks. I had only seen him in just lesser B movies, and who can forget him as one of the main right hands in Beverly Hills Cop, and
Right.
kind of like Dean Norris, who plays Hank, the brother-in-law of Walter, who's a douchebag but good at his job, a DEA agent.
Actor.
Yeah, so same thing is like I saw those guys. I didn't think they were awful, but I thought they were kind of limited, because you'd see them in guest starring or brief recurring roles, and you thought, okay, so Dean Norris can only play, cops and Banks can only play again scumbags, and then lo and behold, these roles give them so much depth to just jump into and become roles that are basically complements to their careers, what they've been typecast as, and even better is like, wow, okay, I'm dead wrong. They can do better than that. They're good. So like you say, everyone kind of gets caught up in all the other standards, ethics, defending Walter's choices, and it's like, no, you just watch the show, let the shit hit the fan. There's nothing else that you need to know about it. And I've seen other shows recently, like Homeland and Ray Donovan, and they totally build on this same kind of just quiet moments, just getting into the psychological aspect of each of these characters, and then gotcha, just a shocking dream or something. And this show, what it really does well, that I think other movies have kind of flunked at, was mainly just having all these various visions, and you don't know what they represent, but they're gonna foreshadow something else to come, and just figuring that part out, or making you want to rewatch the episode. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, now I know what was that thing that's in Walter's pool. What did that represent? That's going to be a future victim or something. Okay, cool.
Yeah, the first definitely great in that show.
That's what's crazy too, is like the first season's like only 8 episodes, and you want more, and then the other ones start going to be about 10 to 13. And another show that I think really does this kind of thing well, I mean, here's the overall thing, this show mainly, I think its biggest inspirations definitely are obviously The Sopranos, where hey, the the criminal is the main character, and then definitely The Shield, which had a Rampart type, cop squad, just kind of doing plenty of naughty mischief and other stuff in LA. But just that whole stealing from the Armenians, definitely you get that influence here with Walter deciding to turn on his employers and do other petty thefts that he was totally against in his previous life, and here he said, hey, I'm dying of cancer. Hey, here's a douchebag student who I can take advantage of because I know he knows how to make drugs, and that
Right, but then he forms a really strong connection with them that
he does
go at any point, but he didn't. That's pretty much the only one he was. I feel like he was honest with him.
Yeah, that even more so than the rest of his family. His kids, he's not ever as honest with, and yeah, with the casting of Jesse Pinkman, played by Aaron Paul, who's his partner in crime, it's just so funny when I end up watching older TV shows and movies, and I come across his appearance now, because now you see how he totally got the part. He just was perfect at playing these various thugs, and I finally got caught up on classic Showtime shows like Sleeper Cell. He plays a trained thug in that. You can see him on plenty of other episodes of shows like Birds of Prey and NYPD Blue, and so there you go, same difference. He was good at just playing the troublemaker. I mean, you were just surprised he wasn't playing someone like Zach Morris or something. He was that kind of guy. He's troublemaker. And here he is. He's just playing. Yeah, he's just. He plays another tragic person.
Yeah.
Just when he goes to that therapy session, and he just reveals that he killed a puppy with a rock, and you're like, everybody's horrified. You're like, you monster! Why would you do that? He's like, I wanted it to shut up. And
it was using the puppy as a cover, like, sort of like, my friend has this issue, but really was, he had killed somebody and he was using the dog, as sort of a cover story for that.
Yeah, and he doesn't know why. Still doesn't know why. That will forever haunt him. So he becomes just during this whole thing, it's kind of cool seeing that because he's like, okay, I sense that he wants to work on redemption and get out of this industry. Unlike
Right.
Walter, now that he's in the thick of it, now that he's been killing some of the other guys who've been taunting him, even though he's got, and I think he's beyond help, but he's an interesting train wreck. You want to see how the shit is gonna hit the fan there, and other people focus way too much on, oh, I can't stand his wife. Skylar is like, well, here's the thing. She's a train wreck in her own self too. She doesn't know what she wants.
I really liked her character because she was going through some shit too because of her husband. So it was like,
Yeah. And I see again.
I felt like it was, I felt like a lot of what she did was was fair. Considering
And people like to do this whole, oh, just stuck up bitch and all that. Oh, what Walter did was for the good. It's like you guys are sounding like Nixon, type defenders. No, this is not political. This is.
You gotta understand her character. Just being a female, what she's dealing with is very different.
Absolutely. What do you think? Do you feel like they were kind of a? What I got was they were kind of an arranged marriage kind of almost, because I would even explain this show to other people and they're like, oh, why does she cheat? Why does she see this other guy? And it's like, well, because there's literally
at that point there was a lot of love that was lost when she found out that her husband was a criminal, though. What he did was like 1,000 times worse than her cheating. But I think the way society is, a lot of people view her cheating as being worse because what he's doing is perceived as, trying to do good for the family. But really,
really it's for himself.
The entire show, she was, it was for himself. And she was really providing more, for the family than he was because, he's basically a criminal and he's basically, he's killed people.
Yeah, and more or less, you can even already sense in their first few scenes when they're at the teacher meetings and everything,
right.
They're not really happy, and he wants to be loved by her, and she doesn't really love him.
The first, they did, and then, they had that scene, they were having sex in the school parking lot.
Oh, yeah. And even
there was a lot of love between them, in the beginning of the show.
Absolutely, and you feel like they're still kind of distant. They're just not seeing enough. She doesn't even know why she should like him, other than that, oh, he's my husband from about 10 years or something.
Right, like he's just a provider.
Totally. To him, the kids are kind of just another excuse for his petty activities. He doesn't really talk to his disabled son all that much, and
right.
Then he tries to brainwash Jesse in a way. He's like, "Yeah, you're kind of my son." It's like, I'm caring for you. It's like, no.
They both at different points try to break out of their lifestyle.
Yeah, at first he totally froze Pinkman away. Then he's like, "Oh,
right,
people are gonna try and kill me. I need you back, motherfucker."
Right. Yeah, exactly. He went back into it.
What a good choice to have AMC be on here, because apparently they were inspired by having good ratings of movies like Falling Down and the Death Wish films playing on their channel, and so that was that's why they hired. They're like, we need something this off color, this off kilter, this wacky,
right,
over the top. And when the violence hits you, it's never exactly like Sopranos, where you're like, that's all I really remember is someone getting shot in the head, or Godfather, where you're like, oh yeah, that one massacre. It's always kind of one of those, this is basically the only way anyone's getting out of this is someone is going to have to kill someone, and they're not prepared to do it.
Right.
I think it's
like The Walking Dead, how somebody just
totally, and that's a perfect illusion that was on, about 2 years later after this, and that AMC is becoming a wholly different channel now. It's like now no less reruns of some, you know, slugfests or some acclaimed dramatic movies. Now it's kind of whatever goes. And
Right. I liked them before before, you know, Breaking Bad and all that came out, but when it did, you know, it was another reason to like AMC for me.
totally, I was always shocked at what violence they would let slip by and how they would do their best to edit whatever movie while make it feel less watered down. And I can definitely vouch for that too. Just plenty of fun memories.
When TV shows, you know, start breaking into, you know, becoming more creative, you know, kind of like HBO did the same thing a couple years ago, and that's how they became so big, and everybody wanted to be HBO, was because they weren't afraid of showing certain things on TV and making certain creative decisions that kind of you know, were considered risky.
Yeah, he definitely got to that point where, you know, that they wanted to just always, you know, they were a satellite channel. They prided themselves on it. You know, this movie's rated R, but it was always wacky how they, you know, would try and leave a lot of the more off-color movies for later in the day after 10, while
Well, no, I wasn't
Cinemax,
talking about those, but yeah, they definitely, yeah, that.
Cinemax became better known as the, we're showing campy action movies and sexy thrillers. And it's like now anything goes as long as, you know, we show you something and it's not, you know, to the point of X-rated, but at the same time it can only be gotten away with. So HBO will occasionally kind of disappoint me when I just see something where it's like, yeah, that show's pretty dumb, but there's plenty of other ones they still got it where they'll find
HBO isn't as big now. I think, you know, I think Hulu eventually won out with them because it used to be that you know, everyone wanted to be HBO. Now HBO is part of Hulu, and you know, you can subscribe to them on, you know.
Pretty much. That just makes sense why they had to do the power play with, hey, you know, everyone else is having everything from their vaults that you can see through a premium, so that's why we got the HBO Max. And so, like you say, Netflix had its moment in the sun. Now everyone uses it, but everyone mostly bitches about it. Also do less quality control, and or you'll just find a show where it's like, why did it get good after 5 episodes? You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, that seems to be how a lot of shows are nowadays.
Well, that stinks because is like, I think it's kind of in many ways just giving birth to more snobbery. You're seeing all these guys who can't do better just bitch on their Facebook. It's like, bored as fuck. Oh. and then you got all these other producers and other things. They don't really know if their show's even a hit other than, did they renew it? Okay, it's renewed, so I guess we'll stick around. Oh, well, it got canceled. Okay, well, I guess we'll move on. What did you think of the casting of Jimmy, also known as Saul, the ruthless lawyer?
I just saw on YouTube a stand-up that he did very, very, very early in his career. It was like I don't know what year it was. It looked like either early 2000s or it could have even been as far as the 90s, late 90s.
Stand-up, man. Okay.
Yeah. So look that up on YouTube. But he was a great choice. I'm surprised that, you know, it took him this long in his career, because I thought that was a really good choice for.
You know,
just to get it out of the way. I mean, all the casting choices in that show were very, very, like, to me, they were just perfect.
For sure. Apparently, his younger brother's a director, and I definitely knew him from his associated work, working with David Cross on Mr. Show, but I hadn't really seen enough of that show. I just seen, you know, YouTube clips. I knew he was a head writer on SNL, and, you know, he would always appear in those documentaries. And then he kind of just took another about face and started doing wacky movie appearances and producing stuff for Adult Swim like Tim and Eric. And I'm like, okay. So definitely the role of the brother in movies like Nebraska, and then appearing in the Fargo TV show. You then see, okay, so this guy, he's from the Upright Citizens Brigade, all these other improv clubs, all these other wacky movies. So he can do no wrong now at this point. He's always just kind of putting something out there that you're like, whoa, okay. You have my attention. I don't know if that's a good thing, but I know you're not a bad actor. You're pretty wacky. He apparently also worked on, Ben Stiller's show, Conan O'Brien in his early days. So he kind of had that whole comedy scene down to a tooth. I know my sister already kind of knew him for his brief roles on How I Met Your Mother and Arrested Development. According to the Wicca, he stated he only read his lines for the final episode script, then threw the script away and made sure he did not know the ending until it aired on TV. He was that kind of a method kind of actor. He just would only read his lines and then go from there.
It did look like that, because a lot of what it looked like was that it was perfect. He looked like he was sort of ad-libbing in a way because of the way.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of what he is. He is a total pulls something out of his ass because, he's like... That's
his character. I mean, his character was this, sleazy lawyer.
Right.
But, very likable, but still, very sleazy,
Right. And it'd be even funnier when sometimes he would come up with an option that even Walter was like, no, too over the top. And other times he's like, Walter, do you want to be caught? That's how you get caught. And so it's just funny how they become the stooges in a way. They just go back and forth, just giving each other.
The first time they met, you could tell that he had more experience in crime than they did, because he wasn't to say outright that he was going to help him out. And
we'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games, music. Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers, the Google Play, Apple Podcasts,
what else?
Podbean,
what else?
Podcast Addict,
goddamn,
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say all that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
did you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zemenov. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Lydia Zemenov, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zemenov, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zemenov.
Hi, everybody. It's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything: pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
We now continue with our program.
He basically told them to leave after they had bribed him. You know, that's how you get caught.
God.
And then they kidnapped him.
Yes. Yeah. It just gets even more and more just kind of, what? Just sometimes I love how the scenes are always filmed, because you always feel like you're a voyeur. It's like, oh, hell no, I should not be listening to this. Even his bodyguarders in the room should technically have left the room like any professional. But no, I'm afraid that one of my clients is going to beat me up. So I need you to come in here because I'm afraid Walter's going to kill me. It's like, then you shouldn't be doing business with him. Oh God, yeah. So
yeah, he was
yeah,
his character was probably one of my favorites. To me, he's not one of the bad guys. He's one of the good guys because the trouble he gets into is never quite as bad as anybody else.
totally. And so midway through, when I see okay, they got the spinoff, at least just a Better Call Saul in a way. I've seen people debate, the ending of Breaking Bad. Even some people, to me, I will definitely compare it with The Wire. I thought it was great all the way through. And the Shield, same difference. I see people say, "Oh, it should have ended this way or that way." It's like, no, they needed to end the madness that way because that way, in a way, the villain kind of got away, and you had all these other themes to talk about, but the story came to some kind of close. And here,
right.
I mean, I felt like it was great just having basically just a flat out bloodbath and just a final monologue. That's all you needed. And I never thought I would have guessed, okay, you're doing a spinoff and it's all around just the lawyer character. I was like, okay, is this a sitcom? What are you going to do? And here, in many ways, I hate to do a compare and contrast. I prefer Saul. Basically wanted to be something in life and then decided midway through, now I got to be competitive. Now I got to talk with my mouth and let the rest fall into place that way because I don't want to take responsibility for it either. So I'm going to hide behind the lawyer's shield.
Right. But then when he is, they still trying to kick him while he's down, They think
totally.
he's not a good lawyer because, he didn't work as hard as they did because he kind of hustles his way through things.
Right.
But that's kind of, I mean, I think that's kind of how most of us are,
Most of us are. We want to find our voice. If we hear it from a college professor, we want to still act like we came up with that. If we, that was my idea technically, or act like, at least pretend that we thought independently when really, no, we're stupid asses until we finally, 10 years down the road, find what we want and then keep trying to evolve, hopefully. And here, yeah, he had a brother who basically was better at everything and kicked him out. And you got,
they're
dad
like,
things. Yeah.
And they weren't completely, unjust in some of the ways that they were, like they worked that hard to build a law firm for it to be what it is. And to see somebody who was, in a way, a lot better than they are, come over and come out on top, in their law firm, you can kind of understand why they were pissed off about it after working so hard. But at the same time, he was a lot better than they were, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And his visions at the start of each episode, I gotta say, they really go. I like those even more because you really don't know where they're going. Sometimes they just start with musical segments, including this one that goes something stupid, and they're just showing us like that's just the kind of life he's living. And it's like, okay, even wackier. He's
right. He was willing to even when after he got his big break and was working for a major law firm, he still preferred, he was basically, it was kind of saying like that he was drawn, more towards, hustling and not necessarily, well, I guess ripping people off because of, he was, hustling drinks off of people.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't really try and he definitely doesn't have as much baggage or victims, but he definitely just gets to the point where it's like, okay, I'm avoiding you now. Oh, now you're on to me. So now I'm just gonna flat out say it to you. I don't need your help. Just seeing the what's his character, Patrick Fabian's character, Hamlin, the main, law firm owner, and just flat out just rubbing it in his face, just saying, "No, man, I don't need you." and it's wild because this actor's another one. I've seen him briefly on brief recurring and guest roles like Rizzoli and Isles and 24 and The Newsroom, and so I think that was good casting. At first, you think it's the swab guy, and then you're not surprised. Oh, it's a shithead. Good casting on Kim, the girlfriend and lawyer partner of Saul, Reese Seaborn. You know, she's also been another one. Just kind of, apparently, she did a lot of comedic timing and other stuff, and yeah, I hope she gets some awards from this role because I've been seeing some advertisings for that for your Emmy consideration.
Right. Yeah. She was really good, and he kind of converted her a little bit to one of my favorite scenes on that show was when he invited her to the bar, and she had come up to him when he was at the pool and he was chilling, and then they hustled they were hustling drinks off of that. I guess he was a lawyer too or something, or no, I guess he was a business owner.
That's right. Yeah, he's going in between. He's trying to think outside the box, and then at other points, he's just trying to get fired from his firm so then he can scam them in some other way.
Right.
That's where it gets really mischievous, and you're like, okay, now I want to see how that plays out.
Right. The thing I liked, he was really good with elderly people, and he did that by kind of his clothing.
Yeah.
Off of,
oh man.
I don't know if it was Matlock or what show it was, and then some of the mannerisms and everything.
Yeah, man. Damn, that first season ends so awkwardly, but they managed to keep you at least to the screen. Is like, okay, now I want to see how he could possibly defend himself for doing this awful stuff.
Right.
And to him, it's just money. In a way, I guess Saul opens the door because you see all these other characters, how they got to be that you only saw a glimpse of, like Hector, played by Mark Margolis, Tuco, played by Raymond Cruz, who's also on those closer shows, and I think you might remember as the Marine sniper in Clear and Present Danger.
Right.
Also playing one of the gang members in Training Day. He's just always been that kind of guy. He kind of avoided being another Danny Trejo and just kind of always just kind of just a guy who just has unpredictable. One minute he's laughing, the next minute he's like, "Oh, you want a piece of me?" And so
yeah,
same as this kind of guy.
Kind of typecasted too. To me, he's always that guy from Training Day,
Who ironically was named Sniper. Yeah, he's all just laughing at first, and then 20 minutes in, okay, now I'm gonna go all psycho on you. And here, it's just so wild how his only brief appearances on Breaking Bad are just the most psychotic that he's ever been, and here he's being kind of more secretly psycho. He's like, "Oh, don't tell Mamacita, she don't need to know about this," and it's just so wild how that becomes a cool test for Jimmy Saul's in that he basically to talk his way. I could be your lawyer. Don't kill me.
Yeah, he's such a great actor, and he's underrated because, and I think part of that is because of typecasting. But he's played on other movies. What was that? La Llorona, where he's the ex-priest, which was a pretty good movie in itself.
La Llorona, yeah, the one. Yeah, that's definitely the only one of the Conjuring universe I thought was actually kind of good as its own thing. I was like, he needs more of these roles as the priest, but yeah, he has some other uncredited soldier roles in Broken Arrow and The Rock, and
yeah, that's right. He did.
And so I think that just helped him. It's like, okay, he's the delivery guy in Gremlins 2, check. Okay, he can play all these other just wacky roles. And he had a healthy mix of independent stuff, but not really too much direct-to-video B movies. So he just kind of got into that fold. Okay, now you're the recurring guy. I do have to say the Closer and Major Crimes helped him because then he got to play another vulnerable, just detective with anger issues. So that was cool. Seeing him now, again on here, it's definitely one of his career bests. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, definitely.
Just switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off. I'm gonna kill you. No, I'm not gonna kill you. But just channeling into the animosity while playing around with that persona instead of just being ho ho ho.
Right. Yeah. He was just a very insane character.
Totally.
Very unstable. He didn't know how it was gonna be. He accidentally killed, one of his associates when they had first met. When Walter was, playing as Heisenberg, and during the first trade,
they're all associated with that. It doesn't matter that whoever pulled the trigger. It matters, Then he starts blaming him for his own ignorance,
right?
And he's just always commonly mentioned, even though in like both these shows he has like 3 to 5 appearances, and that's including like stock footage. It's just and I'm sure he gets recognized on the street now. I think all these actors, what everyone loves about him is now they can use them not only to market their movie, but also channel a weird role that anyone else would have never wanted to take years ago.
Right.
So in many ways, I guess this opens up the whole, okay, now you got to play just some edgy, quirky, even semi-anti-hero role. Like years ago, it was frowned upon. You're either a movie guy or a TV guy, and TV's still kind of less respected. It's just stupid sitcoms and mystery shows. And here, this basically opened up, hey, you can love it all. And now you're getting all kinds of talent. Kevin Costner was paid like a ridiculous, like $30 million per episode of Yellowstone, which is a good segue into this because that's a similar show where you're just watching, these cowboys who are refusing to get with the times, who are having their land threatened by every kind of establishment, other ruthless businessmen, other, parts of their state of Wyoming. And a lot of people I saw had some issues with that. I'm sorry. That to me, I look forward to and binge watch each season. It's always got those Godfather type moments, always got those. Just that. In fact, at one predicament, they even do a Breaking Bad kind of, I think I got a cancer scare going. And, and that way, but the way they did it was kind of a cool tribute. It's like, we would not be here without shows like that. To be able to form your own identity and create your own kind of characters and allow your actors to have something beyond just, hey, this is for my next gig, is like, no, I'm staying here for a while. I'm already comfy being the character. Brilliant casting. The newest, please note, as of this recording, we have not seen the 6th and final season. For season 5, villain Lalo Salamanca, played by Tony Dalton. I'm not sure if you're caught up with Better Call Saul.
Yeah, I am. I'm trying to remember.
Okay, yeah, he's the other porn stash looking guy. He strips down Gus's empire. When he first appears, you're like, wait, okay.
Victor Salamanca, the one that had the stroke, right? The one that was in the wheelchair, I believe.
That's Hector. But remember, he's got this other nephew who's mustached, called Lalo, Eduardo.
Okay. Yeah. No, okay.
Always. Yeah. And you see all these other scenes that he has with Stephen Bauer. I forget his name, but the Scarface actor is playing this other guy who later wrongs, both Hector and Gus. And yeah, he when he first shows up, I'm like, I don't know what he's doing, but I know it's going to be more dastardly than any of these other assholes. He's just kind of, if there's anything, I'm surprised at what other actors they didn't get on this show who were always playing the hey, vato, hey, just that kind of. When you see Danny Trejo, you think he's going to be a bigger role, and he's only like 3 episodes and then gone.
That surprised me that he didn't last that long.
Right?
Yeah,
because becoming better known, and he had become renowned in his cousin Rodriguez's productions.
when he died, he did go with like I don't want to say with a bang, pun intended, but
that's what's weird too. Yeah, people would circulate that death scene on the internet, the most shocking death scenes. I'm like, what is that from? I hadn't seen the show yet.
Yeah, aside from Gus's death, that was like one of the biggest, ones on there. A lot of people on there died symbolically when you think about it on the show.
Oh yeah, and any other show wouldn't have been able to back it up either, and that's just what's so wild about this. Everyone else that's seen for a while was kind of trying to imitate the Sopranos. Let's give all of them stupid nicknames like Big Pussy, and it's like, no, they have all those nicknames, and we know why they got that. It's not just a Italian thing. What did you think of the El Camino movie that later premiered on Netflix and then later on AMC that showed Pinkman?
That was such a good movie. I like the scene where they were in the room, and that was kind of the highlight of the movie for me. Was that shootout.
It's like moments after, and they did a banged up job just trying to get everyone, make them look not as aged, even just 5 years after.
Right. I mean, you can't, obviously you can't, if somebody's aging, you can't make them look absolutely young. In some cases, you can do pretty good, like in, like that, what was that movie with Robert De Niro? But,
which one? Analyze that.
The Irishman or something like that.
Oh,
The
CGI.
they did a good job making them look young. But there was I can't remember, it was like a director or something that said when he was talking about movies like what was it called? He was talking about movies about famous people. You don't want them to look too much like the person that you're trying to portray, because it kind of ruins it for people, and people don't respond as well. I mean, you can only do so much with people, as they age. You can't completely cover it up, with movie magic.
Yeah, and it's one of those you explain it to people and they're still not convinced. You're like, oh, but I want to see it because I recognize that person. It's like, no, you don't get it. After a while, people become to know the actor and they want to actually feel like the person's in character versus I'm just playing a version of myself.
Right. Yeah.
Like some people can get away with it, like Sean Connery, rest in peace, kind of became the Nancy boy. You're gonna talk smack to me, boy. You're gonna, that they made fun of so much on SNL because it's like that's kind of what we picture as Sean Connery. Morgan Freeman. Of course, we want him to narrate our lives. And it's wild how a lot of actors like that, in some way, kind of become that also is that only kind of came into like the second portion of their career, and you can kind of say the same thing with this show. Is like all these people were already hardworking guest star or recurring TV actors, and now that this show just perfectly hit them in the face and they embraced it, they are now on the second portion of their career as this point, and everyone wants to see them play these kinds of roles, or even going in an unpredictable direction. So I think it is just a blessing for everybody. It's even more fun just seeing their earlier appearances because you see how they had it back then, even then. And it just took a while to become acknowledged. And El Camino, I think the best part was just showing Jesse finally gets some kind of redemption, just finally get out. And it wasn't easy. He had all these other just things where it's like, man, I cannot get away. I have done everything. And now I got these guys. They're dressed up as narcs, but they're not narcs, and I got all
Kind
these
of
other.
see what a little bit of the when he was in the beginning, when he was, that meth slave to those, that I don't know what you'd call them, that racist group of
Oh yeah, the white supremacist group, yeah, the neo Nazis, yeah.
yeah.
You think, okay, they're all said and done. He still, had a bigger chapter, a bigger stake to play in the whole deal before Walter came in the last few minutes and built all these, James Bond type gadgets that just slaughtered the whole place. But yeah, now basically he's reflecting on his life. He's just trying to get over all his visions of his dead girlfriend and just flat out say, okay, I'm done. Guess what? I'm still done. Leave me be. And I think, that was also just complimentary to the actor Aaron Paul, because, he'd already finally been getting movie offers, and it's like, you know what? Let's just play it one last time. And lo and behold, you could, again, when Better Call Saul came out, it just felt like, okay, you're reaching, you're getting spoiled on your success, but it was just still just so innovative, still so carefully put together.
That's normally how spinoffs are, that's why it surprised me that it for Better Call Saul it was actually pretty good. And and Camino was, it was the same way. It was a spinoff, but it was still really great.
Yeah, who could have guessed?
And it's funny because I mean it's so many years later, and and it still hit pretty good.
And I think you said it best yourself. I mean, this show just takes you and just holds you firm, and then kind of slaps you in the face with all the stuff that is going on. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa! My head's spinning.
Yeah.
And I think it helps that you look at the bios of some of these actors, especially Saul and Reese Seaborn, who played Kim. They embrace movies and shows by just wanting to do very sarcastic types of characters.
Right.
And I got to hand it to these producers. They came off X-Files, which most people don't really seem to remember, in between all the Monster of the Week shows.
That was a really good show. The X-Files, I mean, come on, that's
I love it all, and everyone likes to do the whole Star Trek, Star Wars, and I'm always like, leave the room, stop, no, stop. Welcome to your opinion, stop ruining it for me. And everyone forgets there's a lot of sarcastic moments on that show. There's a lot of other campy episodes. There's a lot of Twilight Zone type episodes, and I don't mean in that there's the Monster of the Week. I mean that there's, I don't know what they were thinking, but it was kind of funny.
Yeah. Very bizarre.
Yeah, it's just that weird kind of bizarre. And I see people compare it to other shows of the time, like Buffy and all that. I'm like, no, not even. This one was out there, and it was kind of really cool, especially when it had rivals like Twin Peaks, and it was the more successful of the two. And this show,
you can't hate on that one.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, just the fact that they wanted to go there, they used that time to say, hey, that's what we are.
Right.
You don't like it, you don't have to watch. And these actors and these writers, I mean, they once they got comfy, they instantly were like, hey, we're gonna keep surprising you, and we're fortunately, I think I'm getting very annoyed at how everyone acts like, oh, it's only worth seeing just for the actors. It's like, no, see, the writing complemented it all. They had to learn how to convey that.
It had to be put together in a certain way for it to work, and I think they did an excellent job. I mean, it's I think it's one of the shows that people say kind of sparked the the golden age of television. Now we're kind of in the golden age because you can, all these great shows coming out, and that was pretty much one of the first ones.
Yeah, I mean that was the one where it's like, okay, we're filming it like some of these other mystery shows, but it's hardly, one where you're gonna know who the main villain is by the end of the episode. No, you got a whole season of this, and we got complications with the actor schedules, but we're using that to our advantage. Oh, they went missing.
Yeah.
And,
well, you kind of always have to deal with that, I imagine, in movies because, a lot of these actors, they're not just acting in one movie at a time. They'll be acting in several movies, and you kind of have to work with it. Kind of like with Superman and the mustache, and the bad
yeah. That's so true. And it's like, you see how it turns out when people get that spoiled and that they act like millions of dollars can cover up a bad mistake. And it's like, no, guys, it's still a bad mistake. Don't do it. You got to plan this out. You got to.
It wasn't like, for Superman, for example, when he could just shave it off. It was, he had to have it on for his character.
And it was just so dumb too. I mean, it was Mission Impossible. It's like you could have easily used it for that movie versus this movie. And
yeah.
It just shows me now that basically everyone's still getting opportunities and then kind of getting a little too comfy for their own good. So now you got people who are essentially just basically now they're, for lack of a better term, they get a chance and then they get comfy and then they have to find some other kind of chance. And
right.
Unfortunately, we live in a market where everyone forgets about how movies were alternately distributed. Everyone just instantly, now they go, so it's direct-to-video. It's like, well, direct-to-video for distribution really doesn't exist anymore. Now it's all just streaming and through either official or independent ways. And
right. At the end of the day, it's still a business, It's still just a way of making money for people.
And people seem to forget that's how it was with shows. If you couldn't download it or find an alternate way of, looking it up online, you only had like a few video store copies that were given, or people would edit a show into a 2-hour movie and have it be a series of that. People forgot about those kind of markets. And with TV, I think you can say we're just so spoiled, and there's a reason Netflix doesn't want to lose any subscribers. They're like, yeah, we need people to keep vegging out in front of our screens watching this show.
Right.
It's now to the point where people now want to go back. And I'll tell you what, I was in a screenwriting class and I had a guy who basically was an over-the-top druggie. He was a good writer, but he was an absolute prick. Like, he just was mean to everybody. And at one point, he just would act like we were ripping off stuff from other movies. It's like, oh my God, you're so vain. And
that's kind of part of being, creative, is you do kind of have to use stuff from other people in a way. Not where you're directly copying off of somebody, but
absolutely. But he dared to say
rock music, and a lot of artists, are supportive of each other, but some aren't.
Essentially he was the kind of guy, he even wanted to dare us to even hate his own work, and he had no idea. Yeah, it's a well done character piece. Why do you want us to hate it? We hate you. We don't hate your stories. And it was like, it was just so funny.
That's good. That's good. I mean, if you like his artwork,
right. That's the only thing keeping us from just slapping him out of the classroom. But I mean, it was just so funny how he dared. I wrote a story. It wasn't a very good terrorism thriller. It needed less dialogue and more build up, more backstory. And I was trying to make it kind of like an Arlington Road type terrorism thriller. And I mentioned briefly that 2 planes collided. And he's like, "You ripped off Breaking Bad." I'm like, "I haven't even seen it. What are you talking about?" I'm pretty sure I'm not, by that reference, you might as well say I'm ripping off any disaster movie. I'm not, that's not
ripping off Broken Arrow.
Yeah, there you go. 24 season 7 premiere. No, I'm I think that's also why this works well too. There's a lot of similar kind of, I don't think you can directly compare it with all these Training Day, 24 and Prison Break type movies and shows, but it definitely plays to that kind of audience as well. It's like it was playing to the maturity of those Sopranos type shows.
Yeah.
And while also having a lot of the crime and action escapade of those other ones I mentioned, and then just continually just breaking the bars. Like, how far can the anti-hero turned villain turned do whatever I want person do?
Mm-hmm.
How low can they go? Literally.
Right.
and how can we be enthralled by such, an encompassed viewpoint? And I think I mentioned before, who else do you think would have originally been approached for this kind of thing had it been kind of a movie or a show? I mean, definitely they would have probably considered someone like Robin Williams, but I mean, audiences would have just totally rejected it. They would have been like, okay, that's a step too far, I think. And I think it was just brilliant. They had a respected character actor in the business, but who wasn't necessarily a instantly recognized guy other than 2 brief sitcom roles. And so then you had this temptation, this daring to go there. And I hate to say it, even though people, again, I mentioned Power, Ray Donovan, those shows are still kicking. One of them got unfairly canceled too soon, but is being shipped around, and Power is already got like 3 other spinoffs coming. It's already debuted recently, its own spinoff, and I think that one will last a while because much like this, it's comfortable being its own thing. Yes, if you want to be sarcastic or everything, you can say, okay, everybody's taking, from Scarface and all these other ones, and then we're just having all this other, explicit content and other stuff. But I think those ones work better because they know what audiences will and won't accept. Is like audiences now will accept shocking stuff, and as long as you keep playing mind games with them, it all feels like a payoff versus cheat. I've been mentioning Sopranos for a while. I still don't think they ended it all that well, but I'm glad that they did a prequel movie. But I know others who will defend the ending to this day and age, and I'm like, okay, suit yourself. And I think you could say, though, that one suffered not only from coming out during the writer's strike and some too much other good stuff coming out, but I think at that point people were still kind of programmed a certain way. Not just society thinking, but just a show us in this way or that way. It's got to be all epic. It's got to be a bloodbath or something. And I think by that point we were seeing everybody's just comfortable doing what they want to do. It shouldn't be what the programmers told us to do.
Right.
Like Breaking Bad never got any studio notes, and that's a rarity because nowadays it still seems like unless your last name is, or unless your name is Dick Wolf, they're not going to leave you alone. And it's kind of stinky to think that this still has to happen. It's like, guys, it's perfect. You can't get these ratings any better. So you got to you either got to take up enough programming time. Whatever happened to 2 episodes in a day? That can work. People will definitely see one or the other and catch up on streaming, but no one wants to do it. It goes into such predictable markets to where it's like, well, why bother making it at all? Like, there will always be an advertisement for some new NBC sitcom, and I'm like, yeah, that's not going to last more than like 13 episodes.
Right.
Because it's just, I think we're suffering because nowadays when everything's still produced a little out of studio as opposed to in studio. It's like since 03, 05, they've always been hiring these studios to make trailers for their movies, and they're always misleading. And I think in some ways that works, but at the same time, it's like all you did was literally just take part of the shocking ending and just build on that. And it's like, why not, really actually show a legit clip from the movie and get people interested? I don't know. I digress. I think we're to that point where we just want to, if we don't want to be shocked, we just want to be gripped. Someone needs to have us by the stones and just say, okay, you can't change the channel. Whatever you do, you can't change the channel. You're watching on streaming, you don't want to skip through this. And occasionally there are still ones like that where it's like, this is entertaining, but it's not going to change. It's worth a glance, but I don't want to watch every episode. So I think now everyone's got to basically, what some of them fell into problems of, they would have a shocking plot twist every episode, but then they wouldn't be able to actually work their way out of it. They would take it as a challenge, then they would kind of just slowly crumble underneath all their bullshit. It's like, no, you got to just outline it, and then you got to just keep thinking of what could be shocking.
Right, yeah.
It's like, because at the end of the day, it's going to end a certain way, but now you still got to do something that makes us come back, as opposed to what every other blockbuster seem to want to do is to be continued. And it's like, okay, but is the second or third part going to even be as good as the last part? So I think in a way you got to pretty much whole run, and then you got to just keep thinking of ways, what's a character who we actually want to spend some time with, instead of find out the hard way, oh, well, this character is not as interesting as they were on the paper. Or now they're more interesting because of the performer we got, so now we got to back that up. All I can say is this is kind of ruined and made TV better for us. Spoiled us on what we now expect, and I'm seeing some other snobby teenagers talk about stuff like this too, and it's like, well, you don't get it, we this is kind of, you can't just replicate success like this, and you can't be as edgy in every retrospect. We still have censor issues. We still have just even justifying content underneath all the shock and awe. So
you got other issues to deal with as well,
yeah.
They dealt with that like Fresh Prince and Good Times and stuff like that.
That's a good point too. Fresh Prince and Good Times, they had to make do with, cast members leaving, and yeah, man.
So, and you can't predict when those will happen, so you have to write around those as well.
It's so true. And I feel like some crime procedurals always do pretty good jobs. They always are like, yeah, this guy, he's been acting unprofessional. We finally fired him.
Right.
And then predict that they might be back. I think a good parallel is, I think everyone's excited that Stabler from SVU is coming back in his own show. So it's like, that's kind of like this. Like, you could do something like that, especially like with a Breaking Bad type franchise. You could definitely bring a character just back, but lo and behold, they're getting their own show. The demand of that character is so beloved, so talked about, so even there's so many other characters who people love to hate on a daily basis because the characters just so shocking and all over the place and well acted. So I think everyone's figuring out other layers to the whole market. I talked about The Shield earlier. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that show.
No, not with that one. I haven't seen it.
It's all good. Unfortunately, I noticed that a lot of people would just throw that one away. They thought, oh, it's just another one-dimensional mystery show. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. It's a pretty layered, has you by the balls kind of show, where all these vice cops are doing everything beyond illegal for their own personal gain, and then again, like Walter backing it up, saying, "Hey, we caught these guys. Everyone's happy." And
it kind of challenges you on, on the initial process. Is it law to break the law in order to catch, these serious, violators, or.
Yeah, and just having all these Vice Squad tropes, but then going beyond it, and I had to just tell them, guys, it's hardly just another cop show. If anything, this is a disturbing versions of all these kinds of shows. And then it was by the most unlikeliest of people who also had shows that had sarcastic moments and wacky characters. So much like Breaking Bad, I mean, I'm seeing that now where all these actors are doing shows that are just as edgy as the kind of characters they're playing now. That actor, Michael Chiklis, is now on a show that's going to premiere on CBS called Coyote, where he plays a border guard who imports smugglers and has a coming to Jesus moment. And Bryan Cranston, what can I say? He's been on recurring roles on other shows like Sneaky Pete, but he's now on this other upcoming show called Your Honor, where he plays a judge with a personal connection to whoever's on trial, and he tries to tamper with it. So they're all going to definitely keep doing those kinds of roles that are similar, but different enough to where now all they can do is be more edgier than their last role that they did.
Right, definitely. But at the same time, I don't think they're necessarily being typecasted because they still do kind of play other roles.
Yeah, if anything, this opened the door. Now you want to see how more surprising and shocking they can do, because that's just the only compromise you're going to get. They know they'll always be compared to this kind of role, but now at least it's more than just I'm the sitcom dad or I'm the drug dealer. Now I'm Mr. Crazy. I'm Mr. Shock and Awe.
Right. What was it that I guess Dean Norris, the one that played Hank.
Yeah, Hank is going on a total. Now when I see him now, I know he's going to play he's getting more screen time than he typically got, which was usually FBI agent number 1 or 5.
Yeah, I've always seen him typecasted as roles at the top, but I haven't, really, seen a whole lot of the show. When I paused, he was a completely different character.
Yeah, that's a good parallel. I even saw him briefly on 24 as like some one of the president's like main generals giving advice, and that was a totally different role there too. But so I guess you could say that I'm now more curious as to what the creators will do next, because now they have the freedom. They've done free hit shows now. What will they do next that will, again, just kind of both be a change up in what we expect to see them do, and what will they even have to change the TV landscape at this point, because they've already kind of been edgy enough.
Right. I feel like it has. I mean, it's just TV is very different. I think it's kind of changed the way a lot of shows kind of tell their stories.
That's true too. Like movies, everyone forgets there used to be alternate ways to market, and I've already kind of talked enough about that. But I mean, like with shows now, you can have a random YouTube series with a well-known rapper or character actor, and someone will eventually look at some of that. Studios can be more sneaky with how much their budget was or viewers were. So really now it's just a matter of, you can put your movie on Amazon Prime or Redbox. So there's really no need to worry about getting by or everything. It's like, if you want to do it, go out and do it. What could you possibly lose besides, time, money? Just if you're not a studio, but you have something that might interest people, people will still check out some kickboxing movie with some semi-known UFC fighters. People will still look at a comedy that looks stupid that has a cult stand-up guy. So there's so many markets you can tap into that you just got to pretty much just have some other kind of substance or style to it.
Yeah, I imagine your actors are a marketing tool as well. You know, when it comes to making a movie or a show.
Yeah, and as long as you're not schlocky with the marketing, where it's clearly a bad Photoshop job, putting someone's face on a body, I mean, people will check it out. And unfortunately, we've seen just so many people. I remember in the earlier days when they were embracing DVD, people would, midway through, they would just take screenshots from the movie. They didn't even have any kind of photos, even behind the scenes or publicity stuff. They had just the screenshots from the movie that they had to try and do high res, and the more high res they tried to be, the more shitty it looked, because they were doing, again, someone in Photoshop wasn't being told no. There wasn't as much quality control, and now basically everything is so digital. And doing some extra work, I would always hear some behind the scenes horror stories. It's like, wow, it took them that long just to do that simple a scene, or stuff like that, to where now it's pretty much, if someone does a good job, it pays off. If someone does a bad job, then your best option at that point is to salvage it and try and have it not show. And unfortunately, it eventually will, because some story will get out that someone was a horse's ass, walked off the set.
Yeah, well, I mean, if something's good, people definitely gonna nitpick also. Yeah.
That's unfortunately true too. And so I just have to tell people, hey, stop trying to be like Star Wars. Stop trying to be like effects. Stop trying to be like, oh, now this is just a excuse for us all to bitch at each other about what we like and hate. No, stop. It doesn't have to be that way.
What makes those successful, the people who wrote them were being 100%, creative. I mean, obviously deriving from, other movies and things like that, but the whole work is original, though.
Totally. And I mean, there's plenty of movies that some of us aren't going to like as much, but which we can be thankful inspired other stuff that everyone generally likes. So you're going to have that too. I mean, you look at Tarantino, he'll mention a bunch of movies that are like the worst of all time. But he was inspired by that, and so that's how he got shocking moments in his movies, and because he loves everything, you can't help it.
There's so many underrated, spaghetti westerns and things like that.
Very much so, and I mean, I think this show owed itself to being comfortable being its own piece. It wasn't trying to be a Tarantino knockoff, and I see other people say that can be kind of loose. No, you can kind of tell when people are. I get that Tarantino is influenced by other movies, but you can often tell when people are influenced by him because they got assassins and thieves talking stylishly to each other, having unusual musical segments while some action scene goes on. Basically, beat pictures with lots of well-known genre actors. So this one kind of, it didn't really rely on, hey, we got some Pulp Fiction kind of moments,
Right.
This was kind of like, we're going to just keep going in the general direction that most don't consider, and we're going to be consistent. We're going to layer out every portion. I definitely think it's interesting contrasting it to shows like The Wire. I don't know if you saw that, because that one had some, that was taken from some actual experiences from people in Baltimore, looking at the whole outlook of things, even casting some of the real life criminals in bit parts. But what it did so well is it too was hardly what you expected the genre piece to be. Is like, it's got cops, but it's not really a cop show. It's got criminals, but it's not just a criminal show. It's just kind of a outlook on drug trafficking and the ruthless people within it who are overshadowed by their egos and predictably betrayed, much to amusing delight. And then you got these cops who get all political because they're all have no lives, are unhappy but really good at solving crimes, you know, and so
Yeah.
like the McNulty character, I would definitely,
but they're just shitty people.
totally, like, I would totally there's those two supporting guys, I always forget their names, but who basically, if they're not arresting people, all they're doing is stealing drug money at the crime scene and covering it up.
All right.
And so those are always interesting parallels. Is like, yeah, to them, they're like, I did nothing wrong. No one got hurt. Just $2 million you're not gonna process. And
no one's gonna miss this money.
Yeah, we're not gonna. We're gonna gladly risk a mistrial or not enough evidence, a botched arrest. And then you got McNulty, who again, you know, is sleeping with whores, who is always having that classic phrase, "What the fuck did I do?" And I always kind of compared him to Walter White and all these other guys, except he was kind of more of a guy. I mean, he doesn't even know what his kids are doing. He is trying to get closer to his wife, who's bored and wanted to use him for some sex. So it's like
Walter White is definitely like, you know, what the fuck did I do? Like, he's never directly involved in a lot of the stuff he does. Well, I mean, he kind of pulls the strings, you know, to use a Godfather reference. You know, he kind of pulls the strings on a lot of things.
And that's pretty much all you can do. It's okay to have references to any of these shows if you're going to make your own crime movie, but you pretty much gotta just have a character with an unusual occupation, and then you gotta basically make these guys interesting.
Right. Yeah.
Instead
well,
of
he was. There's no mistaking. You know, he had a very interesting backstory. You know, with his company, Gray Matter, and you know, and
oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you recall, but
I do.
Yeah, and his friend was basically the owner, and you know, in a stroke of luck, being unlucky, you know, his friend was the owner and CEO, you know, and he wasn't working there anymore.
Well, and lo and behold, how brilliant was it? They're mentioned in like earlier episodes, just hinted at, and you never in a million years would have guessed. Oh, that wasn't just a brief reference. You know that. This is all going to come to play. I mean, we don't even have to show you the recap. You instantly get, whoa, okay.
Yes, yeah. But I like on the first episodes, he didn't sell out when they offered him. You know, I mean, I don't think it's selling out if you take the help, but you know, there was a company that, you know, after, you know, he was basically betrayed by them, and they were offering to help him now. You know, he didn't take it.
Oh, totally. And brilliant casting of Matt Jones and Charles Baker as all these other, you know, Skinny Pete, all these other.
Oh, yeah.
And whenever I see them on screen, I just know that they're going to steal the show. They were, you know, nobodies before this show. But I think it's brilliant when you see those lasers hitting through the window on those guys. And you're like, anyone else would think, oh, Walter somehow got all the funds and wasted it on a hitman. Is like, no, he just hired, you know, he just hired Jesse's stupid friends, and lo and behold, it worked. They bought it, and I'm hoping we see more plot twists like that on a show in the future. It's like, you just gotta have.
It was
people.
Go ahead.
You want to expect the unexpected, and at the same time, you don't want to just fall into the same routine. There's some shows that can get away with just basically ending the same exact way. I always heard podcasting friends talk about Californication, all these other ones, where it's like, yeah, well, I get bored if it just ends the same way each time.
Exactly. It was good at exceeding expectations, which is always a good thing, you know, especially like in comedy and everything else. You know, when
crime shows
something is a little bit more than what you expect it to be.
And that's all you can do. I mean, crime shows will only last long enough if you change how the crimes are shown.
Right. There's only so many crimes, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you know, like anything, it kind of follows a certain, you know, there'll be a certain pattern, but it's kind of like how you arrange all the pieces, you know.
Right, and if people even want to tackle this jigsaw, or if it's just filler,
Right.
there's plenty of other shows that you watch now, and you're just you'll end up getting a meh kind of impression from it. It's like, I don't know if I should like or hate this.
Yeah.
And you can't blame them either, because they're just trying to, at the end of the day, it is about, did I get paid and do a good enough job, or did we get paid but everyone hated it? So
Right. People will pay for some shitty movies too.
Oh yeah, and how stupid it is that some people still want to do something as a write-off. It's like, really?
Yeah,
After wasting all that time and money, you don't want to release that at all? Not even direct to video? You just want to scratch it? Oh, come on. That'll, and there's so much other unprofessional stuff that goes on that I am just surprised that it still happens. I'm like, I don't think anyone has the patience for that anymore. You got to just stop playing games. You got to just say, okay, we got this. We're going to release it then. It shouldn't be. Hopefully COVID is a wake-up call to everybody. Everyone's realizing, okay, everyone is either going to have to take a pay cut and just film something for $2 million, or we're going to have to do something else. But
I mean, some of these actors, they don't have to take these little jobs, and I don't necessarily blame them for not. But it's nice to if it's a good story and all to and some actors are good at doing that too. They'll take a role, and if they like the story, they'll star in the movie.
The movie will get seen because they're in it. Yeah. It's kind of a shame how many people.
Black Panther, I think, did that with I think was it that one? It was something with Chadwick Boseman where he took a pay cut to afford another actor for the movie, and I think it was Black Panther, but I'm not sure.
It might have been 21 Bridges, I think, which he did with some.
Yeah. That was I think that was.
And it's cool seeing on occasion some independent companies. Styx Media produced that, and they seem to, they also produced movies like Den of Thieves, and they seem to have that niche now where it's like, okay, so whatever we do, we're gonna do a Training Day Heat type movie, cops and robbers and crooked cops, and we're always gonna just make it be easy, crowd-going experience, and people will see it because, again, it's an all-star cast of character actors. So, it's easy money, but we keep repeating it because it has been shown to be successful. And I think people need to realize it's okay to do the same kind of thing that people expect, and at the same time, you want to keep. Sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to do a familiar type thing, and then you got to have a good enough teaser that shows, okay, it's not the same thing that you've seen 100 times over. We are actually playing around with this. And you need a basic standing structure in order to allow for all the other surprises and unexpected stuff later. And unfortunately, everyone else, for a while, it seemed, before this, they were just relying on the gimmick or Christopher Nolan type tricks. And it's like, okay, well, that's not going to work for even every movie, especially if it wasn't meant to be that way.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a